The images you shoot are the most valuable thing you have. How to prevent memory card failure? We're going to talk about it right after this.
Ask David Bergman.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Ask David Bergman right here on Adorama TV. Of course, as you know, I am your host David Bergman answering your photography questions. Today I've got one from Kurt P. and he asked, have you ever had a memory card fail? How do you prevent against it? Memory cards, those are those little chips you put inside your camera that holds all the images you shoot. Have I ever had one fail? Unfortunately, yes, in my 30 years as a professional photographer, of course I've had a memory card fail on me here and there. It is bound to happen to anybody, right? When you have volatile media like that that's being written to with really high data rates very quickly and a lot of data, it is bound to fail at some point. They're just like little hard drives, and it's not a matter of if, it's when. So what you can do, there are things you can absolutely do to minimize the risk of losing your valuable images. The first thing is don't skimp on cards. Get good quality cards, right? Why would you buy expensive lenses and cameras and then buy really cheap cards? You don't want to do that. So research companies. I'm going to put down below some of my favorite companies that I use for cards and card readers, and those are ones I highly recommend that you use, because if you get higher quality cards, they're formatted better in the factory and they're just made to higher standards instead of those like $3 cards you might get for free somewhere. You don't want to use those with your valuable images. So that's the first thing. The next thing is, once I buy a card, the first thing I do with it is I take it out of the package and then I format it. I do a low-level format. I used to always do this just on the computer. On the Mac, you can go into the disk utility program and do a low-level format in there where it actually writes zeros to every bit and byte on that card and wipes out anything that might be in there, any sort of data rot that could be in there. I do that with new cards, and then I do it every month or every 2 months or so just to wipe everything clean. Of course, a low-level format is going to wipe the entire card and make it not recoverable, so make sure everything is backed up before you do that. But the good news is these days, some of the newer cameras will actually do a low-level format in the camera as well. Every camera has always been able to format your cards, but that's not really a low-level format. It just sort of prepares the folders in the card to get ready to take the images. But some of the newer cameras, like the Canon EOS R mirrorless, has a low-level format on those SD cards, and it takes a little bit longer, but not really that long at all, surprisingly, just a few seconds, and it will do a nice deep format. I would do that every once in a while with your cards to sort of prevent what we call data rot, which is just extra data being built up. That's totally not scientific, so don't call me out on that. But just over time, you get extra little pieces of data in that card that could cause some corruption. So keep your cards clean, and it will go a long way in helping you prevent from failure. The other thing is, since those cards, like I said, they're really volatile and there's a lot of reading and writing going on there, so you really want to minimize that process as much as you can. So the camera, the way it works is it's an internal buffer that holds your images very briefly, and then it writes it off to that card very quickly. So you really don't want to read and write more than you have to on that card. So I would never put the card in your computer and start to work on the images in Photoshop or whatever from that card. You just want to copy those images off of there. Just pull them off and copy them to your hard drive as soon as you can, so that you're not reading and writing any more than you possibly have to on that card. The other thing is, while you're shooting, as you're taking pictures, when it's writing to the card, there's a red light that's going to be blinking. That means that there's data transfer happening. While that light is blinking, you don't want to do anything to that card. Never, ever open the back, open the side where that card is, or especially don't pull that card out. If you pull that card out while it's writing, you are definitely going to corrupt the data. Definitely the images that it was writing, if not possibly the whole card. So you really never ever want to do that. So let it finish writing, make sure that light is off before you do that. I wouldn't even turn off the camera while it was doing that. Most cameras will prevent you from, it'll finish writing before it does that, but just to be safe, let it finish all that before you do anything like that. Lastly, and also if your battery is really low, you want to make sure that you charge that up, because if the battery happens to die, I know it probably won't happen, but if the battery happens to die while you're writing, that could also cause some corruption. You just want to make sure that process happens uninterrupted. Lastly, if you do all that and you still have some corruption, it is still possible that it would happen. Basically, what corruption is most of the time is all your images are stored on that card, but there's a sort of a table of contents that the computer reads to know where all the images are on the card. And sometimes that file is what gets corrupted, and the images themselves are really still there. So there are a bunch of different programs you can use to try to recover those files. And what it does, it looks at every bit and byte on that card and tries to rebuild those files as best it can. So I'm going to put, again, a link below to some of the recovery software that I use. And you may have to try different programs. Some will work, some won't, depending on what's going on with your card and what kind of card you're using. But there are programs that will help with that. In a total last resort, if you really have valuable images and none of those programs can do it, there are services that will take those and try to recover them as best they can. But again, that's only really as a last resort. Hopefully, if you followed all these practices, you'll never have to get to that point, and you will not lose any of your valuable images. So thanks, Kurt, for asking that question. Listen, if you have a photo question, go to AskDavidBergman.com. There's a forum on there. You fill it out, ask me your own photo question. I will pick the best ones and answer them right here on a future show. Also, you're here on Adorama TV. There are lots of other great shows here besides Ask David Bergman. It's all free just for you guys. So make sure you check it out from all the other hosts there. Thanks very much. Come back next week. We'll have a new question. I will see you then.